On the day of my grand wedding to Alexander, the heir to the Marquis's house, his widowed sister-in-law demanded to take him to her own chambers for the night. With tears welling in her eyes, she handed me a porcelain doll. "My dear sister, please try to understand my lonely plight. I have always longed for a child. Make do with this for one night. After tonight, I will return Alexander to you." I stepped between them, my gaze fixed on Alexander. "What are your thoughts on this?" He answered frantically. "My sister-in-law is just drunk and sentimental. You must let me pass. I need to help her back to her room to rest." Seeing the concern practically overflowing from his eyes, I let out a resigned laugh. If that is how it was going to be, then I had no desire to protect this vast marquisate either. I took the porcelain doll from Sylvia's hand and smashed it violently onto the floor. In an instant, ceramic shards flew everywhere. The color drained from Sylvia's face, tears streamed down her cheeks. One by one, as if she had suffered the world's greatest injustice. "Sister, what are you doing? I meant well," I sneered. "Meant well, anyone who didn't know better would think I was entering a spirit marriage. Natalie, what nonsense are you spouting on our wedding day?" Alexander's brow furrowed in displeasure. He shot me a look, signaling that I should apologize to Sylvia at once. She was merely drunk and made a few jokes. Must you take it so seriously? She kindly offered you a wedding gift, and you have the audacity to be so ungrateful. Ungrateful? Watching Alexander shield Sylvia, I was suddenly reminded of when we first got together. He had been the same way then. Even back then, I had pointed out that his relationship with Sylvia was too intimate for a brother and sister-in-law, and that they should maintain a proper distance. But all it took was a few tears from Sylvia for Alexander to shove me aside, accusing me of having a filthy mind, and trying to ruin his widowed sister-in-law's reputation. "Natalie, we are both women. How can your heart be so malicious?" On his deathbed, my brother asked me to take good care of his wife, since I gave him my word, I will never allow her to suffer the slightest grievance. And so, for 3 years, Sylvia never suffered the slightest grievance. The one who suffered was always me. Sylvia was always having accidents. A dress she gave me would have a poisoned needle she'd forgotten to remove. The tea she handed me would be accidentally drugged. A lakeside stroll would involve her accidentally tripping and pushing me into the water. But every time, before I could even react, Alexander would pull her behind him, urging me to be more magnanimous. "How could she possibly want to harm you? Since you weren't truly hurt, don't make a mountain out of a molehill." His eyes were always filled with disappointment, as if I were the one at fault. For the sake of the marriage contract between our families, I yielded time and again. But now, he wanted to spend our wedding night with Sylvia first. An overwhelming sense of humiliation washed over me, and I could no longer back down. I raised my voice, my tone sharp and accusatory. "Alexander, do you dare repeat what you want me to do?" Alexander glared at me impatiently. "What are you shouting about? I am just telling you to move so I can help my sister-in-law back to her room to rest." "Natalie, what has gotten into you today? You were never like this before. Could it be that now that you've married into the Marquis's house, your true colors are showing?" At this, Sylvia hid behind him and in an angle he couldn't see. She dropped her pitiful act and shot me a triumphant glare. She knew, in situations like this, Alexander would always protect her without hesitation. No matter what she did wrong, I would be the one to apologize and yield in the end. Even though I was the Prime Minister's daughter, I had been forced to bow my head to this orphan time and again. All because she was Alexander's sister-in-law. Seize her and escort her out. In a moment, the commotion we were making drew the attention of all the wedding guests. He seemed shocked that I would be so disrespectful, multiple times, even embarrassing him in public. The shame and anger in his eyes were palpable. He grabbed my arm, hissing, "What is this farce? You are the one being unreasonable. Apologize to my sister-in-law, and give everyone an explanation." now. Behind him, Sylvia dutifully reddened her eyes, looking like a delicate white flower being bullied. Listening to his twisted version of the truth, I suddenly felt ridiculous. Who had truly been causing trouble for the past 3 years? I refused to believe that Alexander, a man well versed in the classics, was oblivious. In the past, I had attributed it to his pity for a widow and never argued. But now, I was done tolerating it. I gently shook off Alexander's hand and took a step back. Alexander froze, as if sensing that this time was truly different. Alexander, Sylvia has been targeting me from the beginning. Can you honestly not see it? I stared into his eyes, refusing to miss the slightest flicker of emotion, and asked question by question. 3 years ago, the first time I visited your home, she pushed me into the water in front of everyone. You explained she had tripped, and that it wasn't intentional. 2 years ago, the tea she served was poisoned. Thanks to my maid's quick thinking, I was saved afterwards. You claimed a servant was the culprit and that it had nothing to do with her. And just last month, you merely showed her my wedding dress for a moment, and I later found a poisoned needle hidden within it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A flicker of panic crossed Alexander's eyes, but I pressed on. The royal physician said the poison on that needle was potent enough to leave me paralyzed for life. Everyone was worried for me, but do you remember the first thing you said to me? It wasn't relief that I had survived, but blame. I laughed, a sound full of self-mockery. You said Sylvia was terrified. You said that since I wasn't truly hurt, I shouldn't make such a big deal out of it. A rare look of guilt appeared on Alexander's face, but I no longer cared. I looked up at the two of them and smiled radiantly. Since you are so worried, I'll bully Sylvia after moving in. Alexander stared at me dumbfounded, as if he never dreamed I would reject the marriage in front of everyone. Sylvia, however, reacted quickly. She put on her tearful, pitiful expression again, and stumbled forward to grab my sleeve. Sister Natalie, don't be angry. This is all my fault. Her voice was choked with sobs, tears falling like rain. I was drunk and said foolish things, and I hurt you. It is all my fault, but I truly didn't mean it. If you must blame someone, blame me. Don't blame Alexander. He was just afraid I'd be hurt. My life has been so bitter. My husband died as soon as I married into this house, leaving me all alone with no one to rely on. Alexander is just kind-hearted and worries I'll be bullied, which is why he pays me extra attention. Please don't misunderstand him. She cried a river of tears. But I simply watched, unmoved. I had seen this act too many times. Whenever she made a mistake, she would bring up her widowhood to garner sympathy, but why should I care? I wasn't the one who killed the Marquis's eldest son. Why should Sylvia take her misfortune out on me, seeing my lack of reaction? A flash of venom crossed Sylvia's eyes, before anyone could react. She shrieked, "If my sister cannot tolerate my presence, then I might as well die." With that, she lunged towards the corner of a table. "Sylvia!" Alexander cried out in alarm, shoving me aside as he rushed to stop her. The guests were thrown into a panic, rushing to comfort Sylvia. I was pushed to the ground, my hand landing on the sharp porcelain shards from before. A searing pain shot through my palm, but I gritted my teeth and endured it, watching my own wedding devolve into Sylvia's one-woman show. She sobbed in Alexander's arms, blaming herself over and over. "It is all my fault. I've ruined the union between the Marquis's house and the Prime Minister's. Alexander, you've been so good to me. I don't want to make things difficult for you, and I certainly don't want to ruin your reputation. If Sister Natalie cannot stand the sight of me, then I am better off dead." With every word she uttered, Alexander's expression grew darker. Finally, he turned to me, his face a thunderous mask, and threatened. "Enough. We are both women. How can you be so vicious? Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your parents. Let's see if you dare to be so willful again." He grew more agitated as he spoke. From childhood, I had been the apple of my parents' eye, a cherished pearl in their palm. No one had ever dared to lay a hand on me. A fiery sting spread across my cheek. I fought back tears as I looked at him, and the last vestiges of love I held for him finally turned to ash. After hitting me, Alexander himself seemed to freeze for a moment, clearly regretting his action. But with the entire hall watching, my defiant reaction only fueled his anger. His voice turned cold as he issued another command. Natalie, I'll give you one last chance. Apologize to everyone right now, or else. He stopped, staring at me intently, clearly expecting to see panic on my face. He hoped I would, as I always had before, lose my composure at his words and rush to placate him, to bow my head. But he was to be disappointed. The Natalie who had been filled with love for him, had been pushed away by his own hands. No, I felt nothing for him. Seeing my calm demeanor only enraged him further, he made his decision. Or else our marriage contract is void. I will write you a letter of divorce, and you can crawl back to the Prime Minister's estate yourself. Without waiting for my reaction, he turned, swept Sylvia into his arms and carried her away, leaving me to face the hall of guests alone. I saw the flash of triumph in Sylvia's eyes and the smug smile on her lips. It was the look she always had after successfully stirring up trouble. In the past, I would have been miserable for days. But now, I just found it amusing. Was Alexander such a prize that she had to resort to such schemes and tricks? He was just the heir to a declining marquisate. If not for our long-standing betrothal and my deep affection for him, why would I, the daughter of the Prime Minister, have ever chosen to marry him? It was never I who was reaching for a higher station. It was always Alexander. But then a voice cut through the hall. What is all this nonsense? How did a perfectly good wedding turn into such a mess? You've disgraced the Marquis's house. Natalie, serve tea and apologize to our guests at once. It was Alexander's mother. She had always doted on Alexander and Sylvia. On several occasions when I was the one who had been wronged, she had simply advised me that a woman must be magnanimous. In the past, out of love for Alexander, I had treated her with the utmost respect and never defied her. But now that I was done with Alexander, I had no patience for a biased mother-in-law. I took a deep breath and answered calmly, "My lady, this is not my fault. Why should I be the one to apologize?" On my wedding night with Alexander, Sylvia demanded he spend it with her. Was that not a public humiliation? And Alexander, without asking any questions, defended her and threatened to cancel our marriage. Is he not showing contempt for the Prime Minister's house? The Marchioness's face contorted. You dare talk back to an elder? You dare threaten me with the Prime Minister's house? Sylvia is our eldest son's widow. It is only right for Alexander to look after his sister-in-law out of respect for his late brother. What is wrong with that? Must our family cast a widow out onto the streets? Is this how your parents raised you? Apologize to Alexander and Sylvia at once, or we will not have you as a daughter-in-law. And I will go to the Prime Minister's estate myself, and ask who would dare marry such a woman. My expression hardened. Ignoring her shocked gaze, I turned and walked away. The Marchioness shrieked behind me, trying several times to block my path, but my maids and servants held her back. I didn't leave a single chest of my dowry behind. The grand wedding ended in disaster. My parents were so angry they barely ate that night. And I sat in my chambers dazed. I had never imagined that Alexander and I would end up like this. I sighed softly, and was about to blow out the candle when a commotion erupted outside my door. It was Alexander's personal servant, being held back at the gate by my family's guards, but still shouting for me to come out. Having been by Alexander's side for so long, he had never shown me much respect. When he saw me appear, he simply tossed out a cold statement. "The First Lady tried to take her own life because of you. The young Marquis wants me to inform you that if you still wish to enter his house, you will get yourself over there and apologize to her now." My fists clenched, but I was worried a life was truly at stake. No matter what Sylvia was a member of the Marquis's house. If something happened to her because of me, their family would surely lodge a complaint against mine at court. Thinking of this, I hurriedly took a carriage to the Marquis's estate. The ride was bumpy, my mind in turmoil. But when I arrived, I was stopped at the gate. It was Sylvia's personal maid, a woman who was usually arrogant and had helped Sylvia frame me on several occasions. Seeing that I had actually come, her face filled with contempt. The young Marquis has given orders. If Miss Natalie arrives, she must kneel before the gates and pray for the First Lady's well-being. Otherwise, you will not be permitted to enter. How dare your house humiliate her like this? My maid. Rose was about to rush forward, but I stopped her. I whispered a few instructions in her ear and sent her away. The maid at the gate continued to taunt me. What is wrong? Are you too embarrassed to kneel in front of your own servant? Now that she is gone. Why aren't you on your knees? I simply stared at them coldly until Rose returned and whispered something in my ear. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. I let out a soft laugh. Since the Marquis's house is so determined to sever ties, please pass a message to your young Marquis. From this day forward, the honor and safety of the Marquisate have nothing to do with me. The Prime Minister's house and the house of the Marquis of Anning are finished. The maid was so used to my deference that she was stunned by my denatiliation. She finally remembered that I represented the Prime Minister's house. Panic seized her, and she scurried inside to report. Meanwhile, Alexander, who had been waiting for me to come and beg for forgiveness, grew agitated when I failed to appear. For some reason, a seed of unease began to sprout in his heart. After confirming that his message had been delivered, Alexander stood up impatiently, intending to come find me himself. But just as he made a move, a maid rushed in to report that Sylvia was awake. Forgetting his plan to find me, Alexander hurried to see her. Alexander, Sylvia's voice was weak and pitiful. Did I cause trouble for you? Alexander quickly took her hand. It was cold as ice. Don't say such things. The most important thing now is for you to rest and get well. Tears instantly welled in Sylvia's eyes, tracing a path to her hairline. It is all my fault. I shouldn't have said those foolish things on your wedding day. I made Sister Natalie misunderstand you, and I. She choked on her words, unable to continue. Alexander's expression darkened. She is the one who overreacted. She is petty and small-minded. You don't need to take all the blame on yourself. No, it is not like that. Sylvia shook her head, struggling to sit up. Don't move. Alexander gently pushed her back down. Sylvia clutched his sleeve, her eyes brimming with tears. Alexander, it was my fault. I ruined your wedding night. Sister Natalie must be furious. She is the Prime Minister's daughter. After all, Alexander, you should go and appease her. At the mention of my name, a flash of annoyance and anger crossed Alexander's face. There is no need. Just because she is the Prime Minister's daughter, she thinks she can run wild in my house and disrespect everyone. I suspect she looked down on our family from the very beginning and was just looking for an excuse to cause trouble. At this, Sylvia's crying intensified, her body trembling. Don't say that about Sister Natalie, she just loves you too much to tolerate me. It is I, the widow, who is an eyesore to her. As she spoke, she threw back the covers and tried to get out of bed. I'll leave the Marquis's house right now and never cause you trouble again. What are you doing? Alexander pulled her back into his arms. His voice angry. I promised my brother I would take care of you for the rest of my life. I will not go back on my word. If you leave, how could I face my brother in the afterlife? Sylvia buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking with silent, heart-wrenching sobs. But Sister Natalie, enough. Alexander cut her off. Don't mention that woman again. A spoiled rotten brat like her needs to be taught a lesson. To learn who is master in her life. She looked up, her watery eyes gazing at him adoringly. Alexander, you are so kind. Her fingers traced his cheek, and she leaned in, her warm breath tickling his ear. Alexander, today was supposed to be your wedding night. And because of me, you were humiliated by the Prime Minister's daughter and became the laughingstock of the capital. Her voice was thick with guilt, and a hint of resentment. My heart aches for you. I am so sorry. Alexander's throat bobbed, but he said nothing. Sylvia's hand moved boldly to untie the sash at his chest. Sister-in-law. He finally managed. His voice hoarse as he caught her hand. But Sylvia simply turned her hand to grasp his, pressing his palm against her heart. Through the thin fabric. Alexander, my husband has been gone for 3 years. For 3 years, I have kept watch over an empty room, sleeping alone night after night. Her tears began to fall again, but this time they landed on the back of Alexander's hand, hot and searing. I know I shouldn't have such thoughts. But just for tonight, let me make it up to you, please. As she spoke, she leaned down, her warm lips pressing against his. A jolt went through Alexander's body, the final thread of reason in his mind snapped. Daylight streamed in. Alexander awoke with a splitting headache, as if from a heavy night of drinking. Sylvia was gone. The air still hung heavy with an intimate fragrance. He rubbed his temples and was about to sit up when the bedroom door was kicked open with a thunderous crash. Insolent whelp. His father, the Marquis, dressed in his court robes, stormed in, his face contorted with rage. The family steward followed, trembling, not daring to breathe. Father Alexander was still trying to process what was happening. Slap. A resounding slap landed squarely on his face. The force was so great that his head snapped to the side, and blood immediately trickled from the corner of his mouth. The sound was even louder than the slap he had given me the day before. Look at what you've done. The Marquis was trembling with fury, pointing a finger at his son's nose. At this morning's court session, the Prime Minister filed a formal complaint against our house. He said you publicly divorced your wife, humiliated his house, indulged your widowed sister-in-law, and defiled the family name. Alexander clutched his face, looking up in shock. My father-in-law, he. Father-in-law. The Marquis let out a bitter laugh. Right now, every official in the court, who is allied with the Prime Minister, sees our family as an enemy. His Majesty was furious and has ordered me to place you under house arrest. Don't you understand? You fool, because of you, our family is on the verge of losing its title. The color finally drained from Alexander's face. He had never imagined things would escalate to this point. But even so, he still didn't think he was entirely to blame. Father, calm yourself. Natalie is just upset. She has loved me for so many years, she wouldn't be so heartless. I will go to the Prime Minister's estate, explain things, and soothe her temper. She will come back. Seeing his son's unrepentant attitude, the Marquis felt his vision go dark and nearly collapsed. You still think you can soothe her? Let me tell you, this is no longer about whether you can win her back. It is about whether the Prime Minister's house will even have us as in-laws. Alexander was confined to his quarters. At first he remained confident, believing I was just throwing a tantrum and would come back to him once I had cooled down. 1 day passed. No word from the Prime Minister's estate. 2 days passed. Still nothing. 3 days. The Marquisate's situation worsened by the day. Officials who had once been friendly now avoided them like the plague. Every evening, his father returned with a grimmer expression than the day before. The servants began to whisper, their gazes filled with contempt. Alexander could no longer sit still. He paced his room, agitated. Turning, he saw Sylvia, standing timidly at the door, holding a bowl of ginseng soup. Alexander, have some soup. You've grown thin. It was that same pitiful, delicate act, before. Alexander would have immediately pulled her into a comforting embrace. But now, the sight of it was grating. Crying. All you know how to do is cry. He swept a teacup from the table and it shattered on the floor with a sharp crack. You've cried this family to the brink of ruin. Sylvia turned pale with fright, nearly dropping the soup bowl. Alexander, I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. Alexander sneered, advancing on her. So you meant to do it. If you hadn't caused a scene at the wedding, are you satisfied now? I am the laughingstock of the capital, and this house is a sinking ship. You brought death upon my brother, and now you are trying to bring it upon me. The disgust and frustration in his eyes were almost tangible. Sylvia's heart plummeted. She knew Alexander's patience with her was wearing thin. After his outburst, Alexander still felt a knot of anger in his chest. He looked at Sylvia's pale face and waved a dismissive hand. Forget it. It is too late to talk about this now. He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. I will go and explain things to Natalie. You and I will go to the Prime Minister's estate together. We will apologize and beg her to come back. Hearing this, Sylvia's grip on the tray tightened, her nails digging into her flesh. Her. Apologize to Natalie. Never. Alexander. You are being foolish. She suddenly cried out, rushing forward to grab his sleeve. Alexander frowned. What are you doing now? Sylvia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Do you really think she wants to destroy our house? Our two families are tied by marriage. We rise and fall together. Her father is the Prime Minister. Would he really stand by and watch his son-in-law's family fall? Letting his own daughter become a widow and the joke of the capital? Alexander paused. Seeing her words had an effect, Sylvia cried even harder. She is trying to force your hand. She is forcing you to bow your head, forcing you to go and beg her to come back. If you go now, you'll be playing right into her hands. How will you ever hold your head high in this family, in front of her, ever again? She is merely using your affection for her to throw a tantrum. Her words struck a chord deep within Alexander's pathetic pride. He was right. Natalie loved him so much. How could she ever bear to destroy him? This was all just a game of push and pull. She just wanted to see him bow his head and admit he was wrong. Once he came to this conclusion, the guilt and panic in Alexander's eyes vanished. He took a deep breath, his tense nerves slowly relaxing, replaced by a sense of smug satisfaction. He once again pulled Sylvia into his arms. My dear sister-in-law, I spoke out of turn just now. But Natalie's father is the Prime Minister. After all, I still must go and coax her back this time. Once this storm passes and she is married into our house, I will have to rely on you to teach her a thing or two about propriety. Resting in Alexander's embrace, a triumphant smile touched Sylvia's lips. Alexander changed into a fine moon-white brocade robe, carefully fastened his jade coronet, and practiced what he believed to be a charming smile in the bronze mirror. Natalie loved him deeply. This was just a childish spat. The moment he lowered himself slightly, she would surely throw herself into his arms, crying and begging for his forgiveness. Full of confidence, Alexander took his servant, prepared lavish gifts, and personally arrived at the gates of the Prime Minister's estate. He straightened his robes, cleared his throat, and gestured for his servant to knock. The young Marquis of Anning has come to call on the young lady of the Prime Minister's house. The gates opened, but it was not a welcoming servant who emerged, but the estate's head steward. The steward looked at him, his face devoid of expression. The young lady has said she is unwell and is not receiving guests. The smile on Alexander's face froze. He thought he had misheard. What did you say? The steward repeated. The young Marquis should please return. With that, the great vermilion gates closed with a thud. Right in his face. A literal door slammed in his face. Alexander's face turned a deep shade of crimson. A wave of humiliation, the likes of which he had never felt before, rushed through him. Natalie, how dare you? Furious but helpless, Alexander had no choice but to return for 3 consecutive days. Begging for an audience finally, on the 3rd day, he was granted a meeting. He stormed in, but when he saw my leisurely posture, the rage that had been building inside him suddenly got stuck in his throat. He stood frozen, only a few steps away. Yet he felt as if the woman before him was a complete stranger. I shouldn't have laid a hand on you, and I shouldn't have said those angry words. He walked over, trying to take my hand, his eyes filled with deep emotion. It was my fault that day. My sister-in-law was threatening to kill herself, and I lost my head. If you are still unhappy, we can hold another wedding ceremony. Please, come back with me, I've come to take you home. He expected me to soften and be moved by his gentle words, just as I always had, but I merely shot him a cool glance. Then I picked up a piece of paper I had prepared and tossed it in his face. Home. Alexander. Look closely. This is a letter of annulment. The paper floated down, landing at Alexander's feet. The words letter of annulment burned his eyes. He recoiled as if scalded, taking a sharp step back as he stared at me in disbelief. Annulment. Natalie, are you mad? You are going to divorce me over such a small matter. He bent down to pick up the paper, his fingertips trembling, his eyes instantly turning red. Do our years of affection, our long-standing betrothal, mean nothing to you? Seeing his heartbroken act, I found it utterly ironic. I rose slowly and walked until I was standing right in front of him. I am cruel, I stared into his eyes asking, word by word. When Sylvia pushed me into the water, trying to drown me, why didn't you call her cruel? When she poisoned my tea, trying to humiliate me in public, why didn't you call her cruel? When she hid a poisoned needle in my wedding dress, trying to kill me, why didn't you call her cruel? Am I really the one you intended to marry? Or do I need to remind you where you were, and what you were doing? On your wedding night. Alexander's pupils contracted violently. The color drained from his face, leaving it a ghastly white. He was panicking. His eyes darted away, his lips trembling as he struggled to form a coherent sentence. It was a moment of weakness. He finally blurted out, desperately trying to explain. I was drunk, I didn't know what was happening. It was Sylvia, she seduced me. He grabbed my arm, his grip so tight, it felt like he would crush the bone. Natalie, you have to believe me. The only one I have ever loved is you. Truly, only you. Watching him, flustered and desperate enough to pin all the blame on Sylvia, only filled me with disgust. I wrenched my arm from his grasp and said coldly, get out, Natalie. He was about to lunge at me again when the sound of hurried footsteps and angry shouts came from behind him. Insolent whelp. Alexander's father, the Marquis, burst in. Looking disheveled, his official hat askew, seeing the scene. He trembled with rage. Behind him was an equally disheveled Sylvia, who clearly had been dealt with harshly, and now looked terrified. Without a word, the Marquis rushed forward and kicked Alexander squarely in the back of the knee. With a thud, Alexander collapsed, forced to kneel before me. Father, you have the audacity to call me father. That is your own brother's wife. Your brother is barely cold in his grave, and you commit such a beastly act. The Marquis pointed at his nose screaming. The centuries-old foundation of this house will be destroyed by a fool like you. After his tirade, he ignored his worthless son. The Marquis turned to me, his once authoritative face now filled with nothing but humility and desperation. Natalie, for the sake of the long friendship between our families, I beg you to be merciful. Ask your father to spare our house. I shook my head, and as Alexander stared in a stupor, I dropped the third bombshell. Harboring a princess of the former dynasty and colluding with the enemy is treason, a crime punishable by death. The marquisate is beyond saving. Alexander knelt on the floor stunned. As if he hadn't understood my words. He looked at me with a lost expression, silently begging for an answer. I ignored him, my gaze shifting to the terrified woman behind him. Alexander followed my line of sight. He looked at Sylvia's ashen face and something in his mind shattered. It was you? His voice was trembling uncontrollably. The look of weakness and fear on Sylvia's face vanished completely. In its place was a cold venomous smile. Your Marquisate, and you are truly hopelessly stupid. Alexander looked as if he had been struck by lightning. The blood in his veins turned to ice. He shot up from the floor, lunging at Sylvia and grabbing her by the throat, his eyes bloodshot. It was you destroyed our house. You venomous bitch. Sylvia's face turned purple as he choked her. But she was still laughing, a shrill and maniacal sound. Destroyed you? When your family built its fortune on the corpses of my royal kin, did you speak of destruction then? I married your brother for this very day. Let me tell you the truth, I was the one who killed him. I want the entire house of the Marquis of Anning to be buried with my family. Every word was a dagger, stabbing deep into Alexander's heart. He completely broke. You whore! Alexander roared, pulling the golden hairpin from Sylvia's hair and, without a moment's hesitation, plunging it deep into her heart. Squish, blood sprayed out, splattering across his face. The light in Sylvia's eyes quickly faded, and with that same eerie smile on her face, she collapsed. The room was deathly silent. Alexander stood panting, like a cornered animal. The next moment, he dropped the hairpin and scrambled over to me, grabbing the hem of my skirt. Natalie, did you see? I killed her. His face was a mess of blood and tears. His expression utterly debased. It was all her fault. She deceived me. I killed the source of all our trouble. Can we start over? Your father will spare us, won't he? Natalie, I am begging you. Give me one more chance. I looked down at him with cold indifference, as if I were looking at trash. Just then, the Imperial Guard, clad in armor, flooded into the room. The cold steel of their blades was instantly at the necks of Alexander and his father. They had come with an imperial decree for their arrest. No, don't. Alexander was pinned by 2 soldiers but continued to reach for me desperately. Natalie, save me, Natalie, please save me. I do love you. Natalie. Have you forgotten our past? He still clung to the hope of moving me, his expression desperate and helpless. But I just watched, emotionless, as he met his inevitable end. 3 days later, the imperial edict was issued. The entire house of the Marquis of Anning was to be executed. Me personal maid. Rose reported timidly. My lady, Alexander sent a message through a prison guard. He wishes to see you one last time before he dies. I was by the window, trimming a pot of newly bloomed orchids. Hearing her words, my hands did not even pause. With a soft snip, the most vibrant blossom fell. I will not see him. On the day of the execution, the weather was beautiful. I had all the gifts Alexander had ever given me brought into the courtyard. Then I personally lit a brazier. As I watched those mementos turn to ash in the roaring flames, my ridiculous and tragic love story finally burned to its end. My father came to my side and gently patted my shoulder. Natalie, it is all over now. I turned to him and gave him my first genuine smile in 3 years. I know, father. From that day on, the house of the Marquis of Anning was no more. And so was the Natalie who had been willing to live and die for Alexander. The spring sun was warm, and everything was just beginning to awaken. And I too, would finally leave the past behind and welcome a new life.